Hi everyone. Today I would like to present Rule 16 of the Rules of the Road, which governs the action required by a give-way vessel. Before discussing the rule itself, it is important to understand the origin and legal framework of the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, COLREGs. Commonly known as COLREGs, or the Rules of the Road, ROR, these regulations serve as a fundamental framework for maritime safety, providing a uniform set of rules that apply globally to all vessels, regardless of flag or origin. The COLREGs were adopted on 20th of October 1972 under the auspices of the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and entered into force internationally on the 15th of July 1977. Malaysia ratified the convention on 23rd of December 1980, marking its formal commitment to upholding international maritime safety standards. And the convention officially came into effect in Malaysian waters on the same date. According to Article 4, entry into force, the convention only became effective 12 months after at least 15 states, representing not less than 65% of the world's merchant fleet, had ratified it. However, it could not enter into force before 1st of January 1976. Once in force, the COLREGs replaced the 1960 collision regulations and became the internationally recognized standard governing vessel conduct, lights, signals, and steering rules at sea, providing consistency and predictability in maritime operations. Furthermore, under Rule 1, application, the COLREGs apply to all vessels on the high seas and in all connected navigable waters used by seagoing vessels. The rule also allows coastal states or relevant authorities to introduce special rules for areas such as harbors, rivers, roadsteads, lakes, and inland waterways, as long as those rules remain closely aligned with the international COLREGs framework. In Malaysia, these regulations are enforced through the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations, Order 1984, PU A 438/1984, together with the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952, MSO 1952. Under Section 252 of the Merchant Shipping Ordinance 1952, the Minister is empowered to make regulations for the prevention of collisions at sea. These regulations cover important navigational requirements, including lights, signals, and steering and sailing rules. Therefore, any master who fails to comply with these collision prevention regulations may be liable to a fine not exceeding Rm 10,000. In addition, Section 81 of the MSO 1952 requires every shipowner to ensure that the latest Malaysian maritime legislation, international rules, and safety-related publications are readily available on board the ship. This requirement is important because the master and crew must have access to updated legal and safety guidance during ship operations. Failure to comply with this obligation may result in a penalty of up to Rm 25,000 per ship. To ensure Malaysia's collision regulations remain consistent with international maritime standards, the Malaysia Marine Department issued Malaysia Shipping Notice, MSN 11/2023, entitled Pewartaan Perintah Perkapalan Dagang, Peraturan Pelanggaran, Pindan 2023, or in English, Gazettement Notification of Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations, Amendment, Order 2023. This notice serves to inform all relevant maritime stakeholders, including ship owners, masters, agents, port operators, and recognized organizations, about the official gazettement of the Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations, Amendment, Order 2023. The amendment updates the earlier Merchant Shipping Collision Regulations, Order 1984, by incorporating the relevant 2000 and 2023 amendments to the COLREGs framework. All parties concerned are therefore required to take note of the amendment and act accordingly, as the order officially came into force on the 29th of August 2023. This development reflects Malaysia's continuous commitment to maintaining compliance with international maritime safety standards and strengthening the prevention of collisions at sea. Unless otherwise provided, all vessels operating in Malaysian waters and on international voyages must comply fully with the updated COLREGs requirements. Within this legal and regulatory framework, Rule 16, action by the give-way vessel, plays an important role in promoting safe navigation and collision prevention at sea. Rule 16 provides that every vessel required to keep out of the way of another vessel must, as far as possible, take early and substantial action to remain well clear. The meaning of Rule 16 can be understood through three important terms: early, substantial, and well clear. Early means the give-way vessel must act in good time before the situation develops into a close quarters or dangerous situation. Substantial means the action taken must be clear, firm, and easily understood by the other vessel, rather than small or uncertain movements. Well clear means the give-way vessel must maintain a safe distance so that the risk of collision is completely avoided. In this sense, Rule 16 is not only a technical navigation rule, but also a reflection of responsibility, awareness, and good seamanship. It teaches mariners that safety at sea depends on making confident, visible, and timely decisions, rather than hesitating until the danger becomes unavoidable. In narrow channels, as provided under Rule 9, the application of Rule 16 must be adjusted according to the situation. In such waters, a give-way vessel may not always avoid danger by altering course. Instead, it may need to reduce speed, stop, or take other appropriate action to avoid impeding a vessel that can safely navigate only within the narrow channel. This shows that Rule 16 requires proper judgment and awareness of the surrounding circumstances, rather than being applied blindly. Rules 12 to 15 help determine which vessel has the duty to give way in different navigational situations. Under Rule 12, sailing vessels, a sailing vessel with the wind on her port side must keep out of the way. Under Rule 13, overtaking, the overtaking vessel must keep clear of the vessel being overtaken. Under Rule 14, head-on situation, both power-driven vessels must alter course to starboard so that they pass port to port. Meanwhile, under Rule 15, crossing situation, the vessel that has another vessel on her starboard side must keep out of the way. Once it is clear which vessel is the give-way vessel, Rule 16 explains how that vessel must act. The action must be early, substantial, and clear enough to keep well clear. However, if the give-way vessel fails to take proper action, Rule 17, action by the stand-on vessel, allows, and in certain situations requires the stand-on vessel to take action to avoid collision. This demonstrates an important principle in maritime navigation. Although one vessel may have the primary duty to give way, collision avoidance is ultimately a shared responsibility between both vessels. Furthermore, Rule 18, responsibilities between vessels, sets out the hierarchy of responsibility between different types of vessels. Generally, power-driven vessels must give way to sailing vessels. Sailing vessels must give way to vessels engaged in fishing. And all ordinary vessels must keep clear of vessels that are not under command or restricted in their ability to maneuver. In simple terms, Rule 18 identifies who must give way. Rule 16 explains how the give-way action must be carried out. And Rule 17 ensures that the stand-on vessel also remains responsible for avoiding collision. Under maritime law and the principles of the Callregs, collision responsibility is rarely one-sided. Even when the give-way vessel fails to take proper action under Rule 16, the stand-on vessel may still be held responsible under Rule 7b and Rule 2. Responsibility if it fails to act when the risk of collision becomes clear. Therefore, the Callregs do not give any vessel absolute immunity. Every vessel must continue to act with caution, good seamanship, and proper judgment to avoid danger at sea. Together, the rules form a logical safety system. Rules 1 to 3 establish scope and responsibility. Rule 7 identifies danger. Rule 8 defines avoidance behavior. Rules 12 to 15 allocate who gives way. Rule 16 directs how to give way. Rule 17 governs the stand-on vessel's duty. And Rule 18 defines vessel hierarchy. A relevant case illustrating the practical significance of the Callregs is the collision between the Barbados-registered container carrier Hades and the People's Republic of China-registered dry cargo vessel Guangbo Yun 328 near Hong Kong on the 1st of September 2011. The investigation identified the encounter as a crossing situation in which Guangbo Yun 328 had Hades on her starboard side. Accordingly, under Rule 15, crossing situation, Guangbo Yun 328 was required to keep out of the way as the give-way vessel. Pursuant to Rule 16, action by the give-way vessel, Guangbo Yun 328 was therefore under a clear navigational obligation to take early and substantial action in order to keep well clear of Hades. However, the vessel failed to make a timely and effective alteration of course or speed, allowing the situation to develop into a close-quarters encounter. This failure demonstrated a direct breach of the standard expected from a give-way vessel under the call regs. At the same time, Hadis, as the stand-on vessel, was initially required under Rule 17 to maintain her course and speed. Nevertheless, Rule 17 also imposes a further duty on the stand-on vessel to take appropriate avoiding action once it becomes apparent that the give-way vessel is not acting in accordance with the rules. In this case, the investigation concluded that both vessels failed to fully discharge their respective obligations under Rules 15, 16, and 17, and that these failures were significant contributory factors to the collision. This case therefore reinforces an important principle of collision prevention. Although Rule 16 places the primary duty on the give-way vessel, the CALREGs operate as a system of shared responsibility, requiring all vessels to act prudently, decisively, and continuously to avoid collision at sea. This incident reinforces a fundamental principle under the CALREGs. Collision prevention at sea is rarely the responsibility of a single vessel. Under Rule 2, responsibility, all vessels are required to maintain continuous vigilance and exercise proper judgment, including maintaining a proper lookout, assessing navigational risks, and applying good seamanship at all times. Therefore, even where one vessel is primarily required to give way, the other vessel must also remain alert and take appropriate action when danger becomes apparent. In conclusion, Rule 16, action by the give-way vessel, demonstrates that safe navigation depends not only on knowing who must give way, but also on how that duty is performed. Through early action, substantial maneuvers, effective communication, and responsible leadership, the rules of the road ensure that maritime safety is not an individual privilege, but a shared obligation among all mariners.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.